Teresa Thompson with the Department of Motor Vehicles. I am your senior driver ombudsman, and I'm here today to give you some information about the Department of Motor Vehicles and what's going on during this COVID pandemic. First off, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And just a little bit about our program. The Ombudsman program started after that Santa Monica incident many years ago, where the gentleman happened to be a senior driver and he drove through the farmer's market. I don't know if anyone recalls that, but that is the reason why okay, a couple of you do. Thank you for acknowledging. That is the reason why this program was created specifically for our mature drivers. A way for you to have someone to contact or reach out to, personally, if you have issues, complaints, or concerns. So I'm located in the city of El Segundo. You can find me in the senior handbook. You can find me in the California handbook. You can find us on the DMV website. I'm going to give you my phone number now. I'll repeat it again later, but I am at 310-615-3552. And I'll say it once again at this time, 310-615-3552. So that is a number that is shared with you. So if you have any questions or concerns, even privately, if you don't want to disclose anything here today, you can always feel free to give me a call. So I thought it was important to reach out to you all during this time to let you know, first and foremost, DMV offices are open. We are definitely open for business during this time. In the past, during this pandemic, we have had to shut down for several weeks, but that's over. We've been open now for several months. So if you have any DMV business that requires an in-person visit, you may definitely go to your local DMV office by walking in or by making an appointment. Either way right now is acceptable. When you get to DMV, there are some health screenings because of COVID, of course. You must wear a mask. Our employees are wearing masks. Your temperature is checked. They also are kind of screening you before you even get in line to determine if there's something that maybe you could do via online or drop off at the office without having to wait. When you get there, you're going to see a crowd outdoors, and that's because, of course, business as usual is a little different. Our offices are not just open to where you can walk in and we can have tons of people in there at one time. We are honoring social distancing within the offices. So there are only a limited number of customers allowed in the office at one time. And again, that's for social distancing and because of the pandemic. So that's just a little housekeeping as far as how we're working right now for the Department of Motor Vehicles. Another quick thing that's very important to our seniors, driver's license renewals. Okay, so at 70 or older, when your license expires, you are required to renew in person. Okay, that means coming into a DMV office, taking the written and the vision test. Okay, because of COVID, there is a special provision in place that was implemented by the governor. And that is when your license expires during this time period, effective March of 2020, throughout this COVID emergency, which we are deemed to still be a part of right now, you can renew your license online or by mail. Even though your renewal notice will indicate you have to come in and take a written and the vision test, those tests are being waived. You will not have to take the vision and the written test for this renewal period during the COVID emergency. Remember, that starts if your license expired March of 2020, March of last year, throughout the COVID emergency. Number one question is, when is this going to be, this provision going to be, remanded, or it's going to be over? I don't know just yet. Right now, we are deemed to still be in the COVID emergency. I know things are getting a little bit more relaxed, and we're supposed to open up, I believe, California in June, which is a couple months. So I don't know if at that time the provision for seniors will be, eradicated and stopped, and you will have to go back in as normal. I have to wait to see, that information comes from the governor's office. Okay, so if you have a current renewal notice and you are 70 or older, and it says come in and take the written and the vision, those things are being waived. Those two tests are being waived. What happens if you don't qualify, or what may not make you qualify for renewing online or by mail? If you have a vision condition that's on file already with the department, where you are submitting a vision form when you renew your license, you won't meet the criteria for renewing by mail or online and not having to come in. If you're already submitting a vision form to the DMV, you know if you're doing this, then you won't qualify for the renewal by mail or online. That means you would have to go into the office and submit your vision form as usual because of the limited vision, okay? Any questions so far? Okay.
When will that cease, that you do not have to take the written or is it vision test?
Right. I don't know. I don't know when that will cease because, this is all pertaining to the pandemic. So
Okay.
as I stated, right now, I believe we're getting a little bit more lax. I think California at this moment is slated to be open in June. But I don't have a date from the governor's office yet when we will go back to business as usual. This may be a permanent change. I don't know just yet. That I don't know. So if you have a renewal notice in your possession right now, and you want to take advantage of the provision of renewing online or by mail if you qualify, now would be the time, because I can't tell you the date when that will cease. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If you are interested in the California Real ID, which is the federally compliant driver's license or identification card, that requires an in-person visit. Okay, so even if you're 70 or older, that's regardless of age, this is a federal program, this Real ID. It's required to have you in person. You can start the Real ID process online at home. It allows you to scan your necessary or required documents, but you still have to come in person, bring those documents, and complete the transaction in an office. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Real ID is not mandatory. It is not mandated for you to have Real ID by the Department of Motor Vehicles. We are the agency, of course, that the federal government is working through with this program because we issue the driver's license and the identification cards. But it requires an in-person program. Real ID is necessary October 1st of 2021. If you are traveling through the airport, so TSA, that's a federal agency, that's who checks your identifications at the airport. It's required for entering a federal building or a military base. So if you're not doing any of those things and you don't want to be bothered with going into an office to get the Real ID, you do not have to. If you don't want to be bothered with doing those things, but you travel, then you are able to use your valid US passport for domestic flights beginning October 1st of 2021. So if I don't have a Real ID, I don't have one, but I do have a valid passport, October 1st of 2021, I can use that valid US passport to travel to Vegas, Arizona, anything domestic within the US, okay? If I have a Real ID, I do not have a passport, I can use the Real ID to go through the TSA, the federal clearance at the airport, to travel domestic, Arizona, Las Vegas, okay, within the US. So either one of those are good. If you have both, that's personal preference, you may do so, no problem. Some people don't want to travel with their passports to go to Vegas or for a domestic trip. Okay, the next phase of that is if I have a trip that's booked for out of the country, okay, I'm going out of the country and a passport is required, the Real ID will not take the place of the passport in that scenario. So you must have your valid US passport for international travel. Any questions on that so far? So far, so good? Very good. Okay, so Real ID does not take the place of a passport if the passport is required for the trip, international travel, out of the country. Okay, it is interchangeable to use the Real ID or a valid US passport for domestic flights. You can use either one of those for domestic flights. So far, so good? Okay, okay. So that's how that works. Also, I want everyone here to know that Real ID driver's license or identification card. So if you're not driving and you have a senior identification card, that is something that is issued to seniors 62 and older, no fee. It is free of charge to get a senior ID if you are 62 or older. If you want to have a senior ID and a driver's license, you can do so.
Oh,
Actually, I suggest that, but I don't suggest carrying them together. Okay, if you have an ID card and a driver's license, don't carry them together. My thing is, if you have a driver's license, that's your main identification, right? Then you get an ID card, it's free. Tuck that ID card away. If you misplace or lose your driver's license, your ID doesn't give you the permission to drive, but it still is a valid identification that you can use for banking and business until you get a duplicate driver's license. Because sometimes we don't realize how important that ID is until we misplace it or lose it, and we have nothing. And you're kind of non-existent until you get something, you know, that's a valid ID. Okay. Any questions on that? That is free to seniors 62 and older. Okay. Your identification card can be the real ID. Okay, so I want to make sure I'm clear also. Real ID is not going to be a separate card. It will be either your driver's license or your identification card. You choose which one you want the real ID status, because only one card can have the real ID status. The real ID is signified on the card by a very bright gold bear on the top right corner with the star in the middle. So if your license or your ID, if you're looking at it and it doesn't have a bright gold bear on the top right corner, it is not a federally compliant real ID. Okay, it will not allow you to go through the airport, visit a federal building or a military base. If it does have the bright gold bear with the star on the top right corner, that is a real ID, a federally compliant card. And you can use that to go through TSA, federal buildings, military base. Ms. Pullen?
oh, is it only in California you have the bright yellow bear on your card?
It's only in California that it's the bright yellow bear. Other states may have a star or whatever their state symbol is, usually with a star in the center. That signifies real ID for other states. So each state has something unique and significant to signify in that top right corner that is a real ID or federally compliant card.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Any questions on the ID or the real ID? So far, so good? Okay. I went over the senior ID card. Again, I think it's a good suggestion to have both if you want, only because of course, if you're 62 or over, it is free. And it's just something to have as a backup. But again, I want to make sure to know that's not mandatory, just a suggestion, not something that you have to run out and do at your local DMV at all. But I do get calls from children and caretakers caring for folks, and they fall ill, the license expires, and then they have no ID. Sometimes that ID is necessary to be valid to get health care. Okay.
So I have my driver's license, which is not expired yet. I can still go online to apply a senior ID card.
You can, but let me tell you this, Ms. Ting, if you don't have a California ID or you've never had one, it requires an in-person visit, because although it will be the same number, it's issuing a new card. So you have to be there for the thumbprint.
Oh, even though I have a driver's license, I still need to go in person.
Yes, yes, exactly. Okay. So now I want to make sure I open it up to ask if there are any questions or anything about the DMV you need to know right now that I did not cover.
Have they done anything about the crowds?
As far as, I would say yes. We are offering a lot of services that would normally not be offered online or by mail. They're being offered online or by mail. As far as the crowds inside the office, because of COVID, they are, again, acknowledging social distancing. So they're only limiting so many people in an office. Each office is different because offices are different sizes. But again, like, for example, you can get a duplicate driver's license online. That was something that was not available before this. You had to go into an office to identify yourself. So those types of things are able to be done online. Renewal for seniors 70 and older. are available online. You all make up the greatest population in our demographic. So that cuts out a lot of people in the office, if that makes sense. So again, take advantage of that if you can.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
My case might be a little bit special. But first off, I've got my birthday's coming up in 2 months and my license expires. So how in the middle of July. So how soon will I be getting the renewal card in the mail?
The renewal notice, you said in July.
Yes.
You should be getting that any day, I would think. It usually comes 3 to 4 months prior to your birthday. So has
Okay.
there been an address change?
But not no, it's on my driver's license is the correct address. So.
Okay, so if your address that's on the license you have now is current, you should be getting that, I would think, any day now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I'm kind of unique. I turned 70 in July, and I also don't have a real ID yet. So, and my license expires in July. So, how can I wrap all this up in one visit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what you can do is you can start your Real ID driver's license renewal process online. It allows you to use a virtual option. You start the process. It has you scan the necessary or required documents for the Real ID. Then they will give you an access number, which is like an appointment. You take that with you with your documents to your local office to complete the process.
And how soon, I guess, what is the timing of this? This is prior to my driver's license expiring in July. Is that when I would do it?
I would always recommend going in prior to our birthday, because if not, it kind of, you still have to have time for them to mail you a card. So we hope that we're mailing out a renewal notice so that there's no lag time, because if you don't actually have a license in your possession, we can't tell you that you're authorized to drive, because you're supposed to have that license in your possession. So for you, I would start the process online now, get the access code. You don't have to wait for your renewal notice.
Okay.
You're good to go, because you're in July, we're in April.
Okay. And I guess if it wasn't a COVID year, then normally I could go in, do my Real ID stuff, and also take my vision test and my written test, I guess, under normal circumstances. But I guess I won't have to this year, or what? When I'm in there, should I be taking it, or what's the deal?
At this time, the written and the vision tests for seniors are being waived. So
Okay.
those tests are being waived. When that's going to be over, I don't know.
Well, if yeah, when I get my license, normally it's for 5 years or something like that. Does that mean I wouldn't have to renew for 5 years and get the written test? If you understand what I'm saying.
So if you go in under this process and you don't,
Right.
and you're not given the written or the vision, get
Right.
your Real ID, get your license renewed, you're going to get a 5-year license.
Okay, so the next time.
Years, we'll see what happens if we're not struck again by COVID, of course.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Yes, and one last question. I'm sorry, I'm hogging the meeting here. My wife is a year younger than me. She turns 69 this year.
Okay.
So I guess she'll just have to she wants to get a Real ID with her renewal. So I guess she'll follow the same process I will.
Yes.
And then 5 years from now, when she turns 74, she will have to go in to get the vision and the written test taken, I guess.
If our policies haven't changed because of this, if we haven't adopted this as a new policy, then yes, that's how it would work when she turns 74 in 5 years. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. You've been very helpful.
Oh, you're very welcome. Any other questions? So normally I talk about too, like AARP, getting ready for your renewal test, but you don't have that. You don't have that right now. We're not giving the test. Hopefully you still are responsible, as we all should be as drivers, licensed drivers, making sure your vision is checked regularly. I know some of us have not been out of the house, or we have limited where we're going. So, get your vision checked as soon as you're comfortable, to make sure there are no major changes if you are noticeably experiencing some vision issues, you know, even if you have a valid license, you know, you may not be able to drive right now. Of course, we always want you to exercise, you know, what's right and what's safe for traffic safety as a licensed driver in California. Okay, we're all going through some issues with this pandemic. I'm tired of talking about it, but I have to because I want to make sure you're aware of what's going on and how we're operating during this time. I want to make sure you know about the special provisions available to you. Still read over your handbook if you can, just to brush up. Nothing's changed. We're just making sure you have some provisions to keep you safe. Yes, Ms. Pullen?
Yes, what's a good place to pick up a handbook?
I can mail you a handbook. You don't have to go into an office for a handbook. I can definitely mail that to you. So just give
that
me a
would
call
be great.
and either leave me a message with your address or I'll pick up if I'm available and I'll mail that to you.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I've got your number. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you.
And we also have, you're welcome. We also have a senior guide for safe driving. That's a book, you know, designed specifically for mature drivers. It's not the book to study for the test per se, but it is a book about the aging process, how to manage things that commonly happen and how to take care of them during as a mature driver in California. So that's also a good booklet. So if any of you need that information or any literature from DMV, feel free to reach out. I will mail it to you. No problem.
Quick question for you. And I've seen a lot of people at AAA, and it looks like they're getting their driver's licenses there. Is that true? Can you do that? Oh, okay.
You cannot. Anything with your driver's license or your ID card being issued to you has to be done at a DMV office. What you can do at AAA is change your address and do vehicle registration transactions, but nothing for your driver's license or ID.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Pullen?
Oh, can you get an ID card separately from the renewal driver's license?
Can you get an ID card separately from the renewal of your driver's license? Meaning, can you have both cards?
Yeah.
Yes, you can have an ID card as well as a driver's license, and you can get an ID card at any time. You don't have to wait until your license expires. You can get that at any time. You can have both cards.
But I have to wait in the long line, right?
Yeah, you can make an appointment. Appointments are available now online.
Okay.
So that's another way of doing it. But yeah, and maybe if you have a driver's license and it's valid, maybe kind of wait and see what's going on and before you go in, if you're not comfortable right now. If that makes sense, did I confuse you?
No.
Okay. Anything else you want me to cover, Mary, that I did not?
Not for me. And maybe, does anybody else have any other questions or information they need?
I hope this was helpful. Again, reach out to me if you need me. That's what I'm here for, to help you in any way that I can possible. Okay.
Okay. I have a brief question just for me. I'm not good at standing in line, so they're not going to mind if I bring a fold-out chair. I can sit as the line moves along.
You can absolutely do that. And you can also, Ms. Pullen, let them know that you have a disability or you're just not able to stand long, and they should be able to help accommodate and expedite you.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And you gave out your phone number, right?
I did. 310-615-3552.
And they could call you for any sort of DMV related questions.
They can.
Yeah.
I deal predominantly with driver's license, but I don't turn you away if it's not something that I can deal with. I usually try to find out, you know, where you can get that assistance, and then we go from there.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mary, for giving me the opportunity virtually.